Hello, hello. How is everybody today? I just did this whole training and realized like half the training there was no sound. So, as I said in the last time, which you may or may not have heard, um, I am testing out a new software right now. So bear with me. I'm figuring it out and we're doing this training again, and it's going to be even better the second time, at least, I hope. So this week, if you've been following along on Instagram and stuff like that, the topic I really wanted to focus in on is the concept of failure and why I believe that we should all embrace it as we start to form our goals for 2020 and thinking about who we want to be in the new decade. So I know the topic is a little weird, but just bear with me here and you'll kind of see the whole point of it all. For those of you who do not know who I am, my name is Allison. I am the founder of She Dreams of Alpine and the Become an Outdoor Backpacking Badass program. I am an outdoor adventure and backpacking coach for women around the world, and my mission is to teach women how to become confident and independent, self-sufficient outdoor backpackers so that they feel prepared for any scenario in the backcountry and feel like they're taking real ownership of their safety and their dreams and their goals when they head outdoors. This topic is super close to my heart because I think women tend to have this tendency to be passive participants in the outdoors. Maybe they have these big dreams and goals, but they feel dependent on their friends leading or their significant others leading, and they don't feel like they're taking that real ownership for themselves. So when they have dreams, they feel like they're dependent on others to help them execute it. I want to teach women how to feel empowered to be the driver of their own dreams and their own goals. And we do that by helping them feel confident in the skills and the know-how and all the things and their mindset in my program. So that is a little bit about me. And today I'm just on here to talk a little bit about failure and why it's so important to our growth and why we should embrace it. So I have slides, as you might see here on the screen. I am going to make my face a little less big so you can see more of the screen. One second. Okay, why you should commit to failing in 2020. So this is me glitching, going to my slides. All right. Okay. In today's lesson, we are talking all about embracing failure in 2020 and why it's actually a good thing and how it relates to you and your outdoor adventures so that you can be prepared to set bigger, more audacious goals for yourself in the new decade. Our whole lives, we're programmed to kind of chase success, and we're programmed to celebrate wins and successes and achievements like get the best grades, win at sports, have a successful career, things like that. But I think it's equally as important to sort of give failure a seat at our celebration table. It's not that I think that celebrating wins is bad, but I think it's equally as important anytime that we fail to like look at it and be like thankful for the lesson and the growth and the way it's made us become the person we are, and celebrate that as well. So it's equally important to celebrate both. So many of us, the problem is that so many of us are afraid to fail. Like, because this whole success and winning and being the best is so ingrained in our psyche, and we're just so used to celebrating that and not failures, we're kind of afraid to fail. But when I think about it, is it really failure that we're actually afraid of, or is it something else? And what I think is we're not really afraid of failing. Most of the time, I think it's more like we're afraid of others seeing us fail, like kind of having to admit that we have failed. Like we set these big goals and they seem silly, and sometimes people doubt us, and then we're like, but if I fail, they're going to be right and I'm going to be wrong. And that is what makes us fail ahead of time, which is like not even go for it, or being afraid of failing, is because we're worried about what other people will think. This is all ego. So, and I struggle with this. Please do not think that I'm trying to say that I do not struggle with this, because I definitely do. Did you know, these are just some little facts, some failure facts. the success rate of a goal, like people set out the goal to go climb Mount Everest. It's this thing we all know about. The success rate of climbers that actually successfully climb to the summit of Mount Everest is only 29%, which means 71% of people don't actually make it to the top, which is crazy huge. And I looked up another trail, like something that's a little bit more tangible for us, something I know a lot of you aren't thinking of going to do Everest, but you might be thinking of doing a thru hike. Well, thousands of people begin the Appalachian Trail every year with the intention of thru hiking the entire trail, but only 25%, this is according to the Appalachian Trail Conservancy or the group, whatever, I found it online. 25% actually successfully complete the entire route, which means 75% of people don't complete it, which is a big number. So now that we have realized that a lot of people fail and failure is very common, step one is to embrace step one of embracing failures is to accept that failure is kind of part of the equation. It's sometimes pretty much going to happen, especially like the bigger goals we set, the more likely it is we may fail. It's part of our growth. I think that we hear that the bigger the goal it is, more likely it is to fail. And we're like, oh no, I don't want to fail. But what I'm telling you is, yeah, it's okay like to set really big goals and know that you might fail because, and we'll get to this in just a little bit, it'll be very important to who you are becoming as a person. Okay. Step two to embracing failure is getting over yourself and stop worrying about what other people's opinions are about your life. Because yeah, when you set big goals, there is a big chance you might fail them. So let me give you some examples. And I'm sorry if I sound stuffy. I'm kind of like recovering from a cold right now. But this is a picture of me on my very first mountaineering trip. It was, we were heading out to summit a peak called Mount Timpanogos, and we were doing a route called Everest Ridge, and I failed. I didn't make it to the top. It was my very first trip, and it's funny, I failed at that trip, but I see it as like the biggest success ever. I mean, looking back, I think even in the moment, actually, I was pretty stoked on that trip. I didn't make it to the top at all, so I failed. I actually almost failed on this trip too, because part of me was just like, you know, I was talking about ego. Like I was just worried about being the beginner. Like I was pretty new out of my group. A lot of people hadn't experience and I didn't really have experience. I was going with a group of mentors and kind of coaches. And I didn't want to be the slowest. I knew I was slow. And I had this like fear of being the slow one and being like going to keep people back and like they were going to regret asking me to come along or something. And yeah, I had all these excuses for why I shouldn't go on the trip. But then my mentor specifically reminded me that this was one of my big goals and that I should just do it. And so I showed up, which is step one of any big goal, is showing up. And then, yeah, gave it a shot and I failed. But even though I failed to make it to the summit that day, I learned so much about myself. And I am so grateful for that entire experience. I remember I was about like 500 feet from the summit and I was okay. Like I made my peace. Maybe in that moment I gave up, like I should have gone for it. Like I just knew like I was so proud of how far I'd made it and so stoked on mountaineering from that trip. I just didn't feel like I had the technical skills to finish. The last bit was like a bit more technical and I was scared of it. But that just came with my growth as a mountaineer in general. I decided to turn around with a couple other people, but I was so grateful for that experience as a whole and that failure because it taught me I needed to learn a few more things to feel more confident and just gave me that like boost of confidence, like, okay, going for it's not the end of the world. Like it's okay to be the beginner and stuff like that. If I hadn't had that experience, I may not have gone on to summit Mount Whitney in the winter, mountaineered Mount Rainier the following summer, and other obscure Utah peaks I did with those friends. And if I had not taken the chance at being new and possibly failing on that first mountaineering trip, and I failed on, let's face it, many other mountaineering trips after that as well. But those failures help lead you to those wins. This is another example of a failure. And this one is, I had to decide to fail. This is a peak I set out to do called Split Mountain, and it is in the Sierra Nevada. It's a 14,000 foot peak, and I was well within my capability, and I was taking one other friend, and he was at the time newer to this technicality of a peak, and it was fine. So I was the leader of the group, and we were doing really well. We were actually almost at the summit, but then saw a really like thick rain clouds forming over the summit. Excuse me. And I, as the leader, had to make the judgment call, and I decided that we needed to turn around instead of keeping going for it, because it just didn't seem worth it, just to get a summit, and it wasn't safe. It was better to turn around because we didn't know how the weather was going to shape. And in that moment, it was so hard to make that decision because we were so close. And my partner was super excited. It was going to be his, I think it was his first 14er, and he was so stoked on it. And I had to just tell him, I'm like, I am the leader of this group, and I have to make the call. Like, we have to turn around. Like, I just don't think it's wise to continue on. I don't want to be that person who just has summit fever. And so we had to fail, and it was the right decision. But yeah, it hurt in the moment, but it taught me a lot as a leader, and making calls and understanding how to deal with that situation and growing as a leader just in general. The point of all of this is failure is essential to up-leveling and growing in your life. Because success is built, like I mentioned this before, success is built on a pile of failures. You're going to set goals, you're going to fail. You're going to keep trying those same goals, and then maybe eventually you do succeed at them. But the point is you've got to be willing to maybe not make it. And if you're only committing to things are a sure deal, there's no growth in that. That's kind of the big point of all of this. If you're the kind of person who looks at the success rates that I showed you for Everest and the Appalachian Trail, and you're like, shoot, well, 75% of people fail, so I might as well just not go for it. It's not worth it. I don't want to fail. Then you're basically already failing. You're just failing ahead of time. You're deciding in your mind, you're like, no, I can't, I'm just going to not do it, and then it'll save me the pain of failing. But you're already kind of committing to failing. You're just doing it ahead of time. We think that this kind of failure, not committing to a goal, is better because you feel like nothing has been lost, but that's actually a lie. You are losing out on so much value in your life. You're losing out on the learning and the growing, the personal development that you have. You're losing out on knowledge that can help you improve and refine and get better. And you really have no idea what your lost opportunities could have been. I can't even tell you how many things I've failed at that have led me to new directions or new opportunities or new friendships or all these things, just because I was willing to try this big thing. I wasn't sure how it was going to work out, but life just has a funny way of teaching you things and taking you in new directions if you're willing to give it a shot. I love this quote. This is one of my teachers. A lot of things that I've learned here today are, and thanks to this woman, Brooke Castillo. She says, you never know where your failures might lead you, but giving up ahead of time is guaranteed to lead you nowhere. It will just have you repeating the life you already have by leaving your excuses, which give you evidence for why you can't progress. I love that. So the whole reason this is important, and the whole reason failure is important, is because it's essential to becoming the person you are meant to be. Whether or not you achieve your big goals, big through hiking goals, or your big, backpacking, mountaineering, whatever it is, whatever or not whether or not you achieve that goal is not as important as the person you become while attempting to achieve that goal. Like there's so much involved in it and like so much growth that is involved with it. So I want to end this video with a challenge as you head into Christmas and the new year and you start setting some goals for yourself. I want you to give yourself the gift of embracing failure. Be willing to be the newbie and don't worry about it. Like, be willing to be awful at when you're first starting out at something. Be willing to like look silly and ridiculous and not worrying about what other people think. Give yourself the gift of going for it. Like whatever this thing is that you have in your mind, I don't know, we're all unique. We all have our own unique goals. Give yourself the gift of going for it, no matter what the outcome is. Like, don't start weighing the pros and cons like, ooh, do I think it's really possible? This might be more possible for me. This might be less. If it's something you really want, like go for it no matter what, no matter even if you might fail. That is the point of this. If you limit yourself to your comfort zone and what you already know how to do well, then your world will stay small. However, if you open yourself up to living big, chasing your big, audacious goals, and committing to failing regularly along the way, your life will become so much bigger and so much richer. Sorry, there's Lincoln's in the background crying. I hope you can't hear that. Okay, let's end this with commit to living boldly with me in 2020. That is what I want to end this with. And I want to also challenge you to commit to embrace failure this year. Okay, hold on. I'm going to grab him because he's crying. So if you enjoyed this, I do want to give you guys a reminder that if you guys are ready to take that next step, we are opening our backpacking program in January. So mark your calendars for January 27th in 2020. So that's one thing. And if you want to kind of continue this conversation with me, or you want to learn more, you want to take the next step, feel free to download this freebie I have. It's at shedreamsofalpine.com/adventure. It's my ultimate outdoor adventure starter kit. And I kind of just guide you along this conversation of outdoors and hiking and backpacking and mindset and all those things. And it's a really great way to connect with me. You can always hit reply to any email, and I'm on the other line saying hello. Yeah, so that's it, you guys. Thank you so much for sticking with me, and I will see you next week.